Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Throughout history, cultures have practiced fasting, a tradition dating back to well before biblical times. What was the reason behind the fasting practices of the ancients? Are there potential unacknowledged health benefits of fasting in modern times? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the Voice of Canada Broadcast Network, vocbn.ca. With us this hour to explore the benefits of fasting is Dr. Gabriel Cousens. Dr. Cousens is an ortho-molecular psychiatrist, Doctor of Divinity, Diplomat of Ayurveda, and a Diplomat of Holistic Medicine. He's recognized by the New York Times as the fasting guru, considered a world expert in healing type 2 diabetes, and the author of many books, including There is a Cure for Diabetes. His website, drcousensspiritualfast.com. Dr. Cousens, thank you for joining us on the show.
Okay, I'm very pleased to be with you, Gwilda.
Yes, this I think is a pretty important topic right now because we all have so many health challenges. Fasting and detoxing can be probably pretty helpful for that, I would guess. So let's start out with, what is an ortho-molecular psychiatrist?
Well, one of the things that has happened in the world is people's brains have become unbalanced. And what we do in ortho-molecular psychiatry, which incidentally started in Canada, the key people, is rebalance the neurotransmitters. And we do that with fasting. We do this with vitamins and minerals. We do this with meditating. All these things help rebalance the normal patterns, which have been disrupted by everything we're doing. So to be real extreme, the Russians did some research, and they found like 80% of the schizophrenics on 28-day fast were cured of schizophrenia. Now that's extreme, but it's very well documented.
So a psychiatrist in the States is an MD first and then goes into psychiatry.
Correct.
So it's the same for you. Where'd you study?
Columbia Medical School.
Okay.
New York City.
Yeah. So what is Ayurveda?
So Ayurveda, unfortunately, I lived on and off in India for 7 years. And Ayurveda is really a natural way of healing that was developed out of the systems in India, not just with herbs, but with the cycles of life and the different kind of constitutional types. Very sophisticated system, and I use it to get general balancing of people. People have different types. I'm just giving you names. I can define them as well. Vata, Kapha, Pitta, Vata, Kapha. It goes on, but there's 9 different types. But the key is, once you understand your type, then you develop a diet and supplemental input, or herbal input as it is in India, to rebalance those systems.
So is health all about balance?
It's a very important part of health. I wouldn't say it's all about balance, but it's key. You have to have some balance here. It's really key.
Right. And we're talking about the physical structures and organs and everything when we're talking about that balance, yes?
Well, actually, the emotional balance is pretty important, the intellectual balance, and the psycho-spiritual balance. So all of those count. I'm also, as a holistic physician, I'm seeing everything. And we approach it with that idea. That's why the spiritual fasting that we do is really a rebirth to rebalance on all those levels, very specifically.
So how often does a person need to fast?
It's a good question. When I first began to explore this in about 1982, started with a 40-day fast and just like, how does that feel? And try different things. But I've come down to a minimum of 7 days twice a year.
Okay. And when you say you're fasting, do you just drink water only, or is there something else that you're ingesting in that period of time?
Well, I've done a water fast, a 21-day water fast, because I'm a researcher. I'm exploring things. I do things. Okay. I like to take green juices and dilute them in half. It seems to be much easier for people, and it doesn't change the success rate.
So by vegetables, you mean like say put a bunch of nice leafy greens in a blender with some water and
Well, you juice them. You put them in a juicer. It's
okay,
different than a blender. It's different than a
mhm,
blender, but it's the same idea.
right.
But you're juicing them, so you're just getting the juice that's in you. And our main ones are celery and cucumber because they have so much water in them.
Makes sense. Makes
But
sense.
we'll do carrot, we'll do beet, we'll do a variety of leafy greens, and that's how we do that. And then I dilute them in half,
It
the juice.
might be kind of intense if you didn't, right?
Yes, and it's much more balanced than water fasting. Because people can get one of the things what we face today is people are very deficient. For example, particularly magnesium, which is very high in leafy greens, which is great. So if you just fast on water, there's a tendency to get even more deficient. So I counterpoint that by using a lot of leafy greens and that kind of thing that will build up the minerals in the system.
Minerals is a huge thing, isn't it? And our vegetables carry quite a few of them, which is
That's
wonderful.
exactly the point. Exactly. And particularly the magnesium.
Yeah. So how old is the practice of fasting?
Thousands of years. I can go back 5,000 years. And, but we know biblically we have Moses. The Egyptians also fasted. Okay. And we have Moses and we have Ezekiel. And then Jesus fasted for his 40 days. I actually saw where he did that in Israel, the place. And the Greeks also did a lot of that. Pythagoras would do 40-day fasts and so forth. So it's absolutely not a new idea.
So do the indigenous people, like say the first Canadians or the Native Americans, did they also practice fasting?
I've met some Native Americans who say that's the case. Now, I'm also a 4-year sun dancer, and for 4 days, you don't have water or food.
Right. And it goes the same with the Vision Quest, yes?
Yes.
Hmm.
So at least a 4-day, fast. What we would call a dry fast.
And that means no water either.
Correct.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So
So like a vision quest, but you're dancing and you're kind of hooked to the tree.
So
Uh,
most of us have heard of fasting, right? What's the difference between fasting and spiritual fasting?
Intent. The
Okay.
intent with spiritual fasting is to grow spiritually, is to work through issues emotionally and mentally, as well as having a physical detox.
Do you find that when a lot of people go on to a fast, they're also detoxing emotions and things that come to the surface?
Absolutely. They, starting with about 10 hours to the 48 hours, people are doing more physical detox. The emotional detox comes out more in day 3 and 4. We always warn people, day 3 and 4, don't worry about it. You're okay. Just have an emotional detox. And then day 5 and 6, 7, people begin to get feeling really, really good because the toxins are out of the brain. The physical toxins hold the emotional and mental toxins. And as they clear, then the emotional mental toxins come out in sequence that way.
When we're talking about emotional and mental toxins, is it something like, can it be thought forms or stuffed emotion?
Yeah, thought forms for sure.
So in
That's the
other words,
mental toxins.
so I constantly have this tape running in my head about my inefficiency or something. That would be one of the things that could possibly be detoxed
Yes.
by the fast.
Yes. When I developed another process called 0 Point, where in a very short time, not with this is not psychotherapy, okay? But in a very short time, we can release those as they come up. One of the things that's great about fasting is things come up much more easily. So they come to the front, and then you can work on them.
So what kind of support does a person need if they've got quite a backlog of emotion or negative thought forms?
Well, I like to do the fasting in a group. And when we're doing the fasting, we have group support. Everybody shares how they're doing and they're feeling. And then I'm working with them. My wife also working all the time with people, like 24/7. So that has been quite sufficient, even with groups of 70 fasters.
So if you have, your average American or average Canadian that hasn't ever fasted and they eat the normal diet, what what are you confronted with when they start doing a fast?
The biggest thing is fear. Am I going to starve to death? What's going to happen? Okay. And we do a lot in assuring people it's okay. And we spend time with people. That's the most important thing. But when they hear other people are having the fears and concerns, especially day 1 and 2, then it goes away because you start to feel good. You start to feel okay. The group support's actually really, really important for people.
Do you think that the angst that comes up in day 1 and day 2 is old stuff that's stored as well as fear of starving?
Yeah, but you really don't even go into fasting mode for 10 hours to 2 days because you're still in what we call glucose metabolism. After that, you go into ketone metabolism. So there's a shift. But the first 2 days is just, it feels a little different. Now, when you've been fasting I've been fasting, as I said, since 1983. I don't feel anything. I'm fine. So as people get used to fasting on a regular basis, then all that goes away. But the very first time you're fast, like what's going to happen? So what we do is we do a lot of reassuring people in the group process things and so forth. And I also do have a diabetes kind of support group because usually when they're fasting, we get them off insulin.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is time for us to take a station break. Dr.
Okay, good.
Cousens and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Fine, heal me. Just don't mess with my food. With us this hour discussing the benefits of fasting is Dr. Gabriel Cousens, the author of many books, including There is a Cure for Diabetes. His website, drchousenspiritualfast.com. Dr. Cousens, what there's all sorts of kind of fasting, right? You say a juice fast. Well, you're not really that means you're fasting from juice, I would think. But I think people mean that to be that you have nothing but juice.
Correct. That's what that means.
Okay. Of all the different forms, um, which works better for the spiritual fasting you're talking about?
Well, a long time ago, they only had water, right? They didn't have juicers. Um, uh, I find, again, this diluted green juice fast, this is why I choose it, is the best for supporting spiritual life. I see that this is spiritual fasting is like a spiritual rebirth. So it's a restart, and that's the key. Okay, so people can get really, really tired on a water fast. Okay, and that actually undermines what I want to have happen, which is you're getting spiritually invigorated. Okay, so you need a little juice, so to speak, to kind of be able to have that energy. And so that's why I like the green juice. Now, what I don't use fruit in it because that makes the blood fructose sugars go too high. And since we do a lot of work with healing diabetes, in my book, There's a Cure for Diabetes, we're talking 61% of the people getting cured in 3 weeks. And diabetes is incurable, right? So that's what people believe. But what's my point? I can't have fruits in there. That's what my point is.
Okay. So how does spiritual fasting promote balance?
How does it promote fasting?
How does spiritual fasting promote a person's balance?
Oh, okay, good. It works in a variety of ways. Generally, and don't take this personally, but most people's brains are shrinking after the age of 40. Okay. So what happens with fasting is certain neuroderived hormones exist, and you actually can increase your brain size by 1%. Now, that's pretty exciting. Okay.
How does that happen, and what kind of studies show that?
Well, there's a few, these are professional studies, and neuroderived growth factor is one of the factors. Brain-derived neural factor is another, and they actually increase brain cell or neuron production, and that's documented. Those are science papers we're talking about.
So you're talking about the fasting promotes.
The act of fasting creates hormonal secretions that actually, and it stimulates brain, what we call stem cells. Stem cells are from what other cells grow, and particularly we're talking about neurons. So we're talking about an increase in neuron function and number. Stem cells are like the mothers that give growth to different things, and what we see is that the neuron cell production increases. That's pretty exciting. Okay, so you're growing the brain. Okay, and that's exciting, and most people don't really quite understand that. Also, we have an increase of human growth hormone. Okay, for men, it's about 13 times increase, and for women, it's 20 times increase.
From where they were before the fast.
Yeah. Okay. So we're regenerating neurons. You're getting the human growth hormone. You're getting certain hormones that actually increase brain function and balance brain function, like brain-derived neurotropic factor. These are just terms, but they're real things. Okay. Then I also found for health, just straight health, we're talking about getting off insulin. Pretty much all type 2 diabetes get off their insulin by the time the fast is over. But we're also talking about dropping blood pressure. Easy. Now, here's the key. Fasting helps you reset the genetic code, the epigenetic code. So you don't go back after you're done fasting necessarily. Your blood pressure doesn't come up again. It resets in that way. It's an epigenetic reset. Okay, so that's like really important. Decreases breast cancer by 40% if people are regularly fasting. That's, again, everything I'm mentioning is documented in the literature. Okay, it protects you against Alzheimer's disease, which I think is pretty important. It really helps with osteoarthritis, not rheumatoid, osteoarthritis. We see a lot of people get cured of that, even in a short time. And it can minimize like heart disease as well. It decreases generalized inflammation.
I was going to ask. It sounds like it's working on inflammation.
Yes.
How much is your intent, a clear intent for the fast when you go into the fast? Is that important?
Yeah, I think it is, and it's a good question you're asking, because if you're just fasting to lose weight, that may be what you get, okay? But if your intent is a spiritual rebirth, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, you're going more likely to go in that direction.
What
That's how important it is.
what is it
So
about the fasting that drops the inflammation and can create all these seemingly miraculous cures? What is it? What's the mechanism behind fasting that makes that possible?
uh, I can't exactly answer that. I can tell you how the research points in that direction. And what we see is there's an increase in, I say, stem cell regeneration and an increase in supporting the immune system. So my assumption is that when you improve the function of the immune system, you're going to decrease the inflammation. Also, you have less toxicity come in. Your body's better able to handle what is, but you're also releasing a lot of toxins that generally have been increasing inflammation.
So, can you expect to go through a healing crisis when you're doing all this detoxing?
I don't expect to go through healing crisis because I've been fasting. But often when people just go into it, there could be a healing crisis for a day or so. But it's not that common. It's more common with water fast, but with a diluted juice fast, we don't see it that often.
So, when does a person start to notice a change while they're on the fast?
Um, I see that in general, the phases, the hardest days are day 3 and 4. Then you start to feel clearer, better. I'm going to say more energy, more attuned with things. Your mind is clearer. Um, that begins to happen day uh, 5, 6, and 7 in
So,
general. Yeah.
I just lost it. Talk on it. Um, so, if you're in the process of fasting, when do you start noticing the heightened intuition or spiritual connection? Is that part of the
Day,
deal?
absolutely. Day 5, 6, and 7 is where it's most common because you've cleared the first round of toxins, and now your mind is working better and your body's working better, and there's a greater flow of the spiritual energy.
Are you
And
talking about like Kundalini, or
I
are you
am
talking
definitely
about the
talking about Kundalini.
chakras, or
Yeah.
okay, all the
Um,
above?
both. So my work, because I've been directed to awaken Kundalini from my spiritual teacher in India, and it's way easier during a fast to awaken the Kundalini. The term is Shaktipat. It's it's by the touch. It's significantly easier. Um, if you just do a regular workshop, maybe 30% will have awakened, but here we're talking about 80%,
Oh goodness.
and that's really impressive, in that way. So fasting opens up what we call the nadis. There's 72,000 nadis. We're not going to count them all, right? But there's 3 main ones, Ida, Bengala, and Sushumna. And the central channel called the Sushumna, as it's cleared out, the energy is much easier to flow. And that's what we're talking about here. And it's significant because meat, fish, chicken, dairy, all block the flow of Kundalini. And that's more of an Ayurvedic understanding, but they all block the flow of it. Um, I, go ahead.
So, you say you juice vegetables? Is it important that they're organic?
Yes, because you don't want to be putting more toxins in. Yes. Um, and when I found, I've done some research on my own. I didn't publish this research, but I did it with about 60 people, and they all and their average toxicity was 26 toxins.
How do you measure that, out of curiosity?
Well, there's a few machines that you can do to kind of measure it, like a Vol machine. I don't know if they're more kind of esoteric machines, but Dr. Vol created these machines, and there's stuff out of Germany too. But the point is, and also we call O-ring testing, which has been validated in literature. Okay. So after 1 week of fasting, we dropped it to about 13% of the toxins left. After 2 weeks, 100% were gone. Clear. So we know it gets it out. But your input needs to be clean water and organic. And not that organic's totally perfect. We can't say organic is totally clean, but it's far less pesticides and herbicides. Put it that way.
That would be kind of counterproductive if you're juicing it, which makes it much more dense, right? Much more
Correct.
condensed. So the chemicals would be probably just that much more bioavailable, if you will.
Right. So that's why it has to be 100%.
Organic.
And we filter the water.
Do you RO?
Yes.
Okay. But then all the vegetables in there provide minerals, even though the RO water doesn't have any more.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Does the fact that you're not taxing your digestive system, I mean, juice is going to go through you pretty quickly versus a turkey dinner. Does the fact that you're not all your energy isn't tied up in digesting and assimilating food, does that mean you freed up energy for other things?
That's an excellent question. Very few people ask that. That's a really good question. So the way I describe it is that your energy that's for digestion, inflammation, all these things really goes into healing. And for a few days after the fast is over, we suggest people take digestive enzymes. It takes a few days to get it back out again, if that makes sense. We also give anti-inflammatory enzymes, kind of natural enzymes.
We're going to have to pick up on those. We're going to have to pick up on those on the other side of a station break. Dr. Cousens and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. Can fasting cure what ails me? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing the medical benefits of fasting is Dr. Gabriel Cousens. His website, drcousensspiritualfast.com. What all have you documented as far as illnesses go that respond to the fasting?
Well, as I mentioned, the literature shows that with fasting, you have a decrease of 40% of breast cancer. We regularly heal high blood pressure. That means off all medication and a normal blood pressure. We have very good results healing type 2 diabetes. In 3 weeks, as they say, 61% healed. And actually, I've even had that work with type 1 diabetes, which is very, I'm going to say, professionally, like, I wouldn't believe that could happen. But about 20%. Okay, that's really amazing. Okay, I'll just explain that.
So to maintain the healing, does a person have to do fasts on a regular basis?
Well, I like them to, but not everybody's going to do that. No, but they need to be on a good diet. So after the fast, I recommend people kind of go to a one-step better diet. Now, I had this guy who was a type 1 diabetic, and his blood sugars were in the low 80s, which is very good. And he began eating fish. This is 9 months later, and his blood sugar starts to go up. I said, you know what? Stop eating the fish, see what happens. And it goes back down. So you have to keep the lifestyle, which is a vegan, at least 80% live food lifestyle.
So staying away from becoming vegan and staying away from animal foods is the way to maintain the correction that you've
Yes,
seen through the fasting.
absolutely. There's no question about it. Based on I've been, as they say, since 82. We'll do the math on that. That's 47, 50 years, So, yes, that is what I have observed. Uh, and people, I mean, I once had a lady, this is a great story. She came in, she's 93 years old. She's on 13 medications. She's got heart disease, diabetes. She's in a wheelchair from arthritis. And a week later, 10 days later, all gone. She's off all her medications and no diabetes, no high blood pressure. I saw her a year later. She was just doing great.
That's
So,
fantastic.
so I'm making a point at any age we can see this happen. You're not too old to fast or to heal yourself.
So can fasting bring up heretofore buried issues and traumas?
Absolutely. And I use it for that. As a psychiatrist as well, I will use fasting and work with people as they come up. It definitely happens. That's the emotional detox and the mental detox. And you use the word thought form, and that's the word I use also. And you can clear these thought forms that come up, and it makes it more accessible because we create a body armor against our emotions. Okay,
So we stuff them
that's
in
a
our
general
body,
term.
basically. We
What?
stuff the
Yeah,
frequency of the
we
emotion in
store
our
it.
body rather than moving it out.
Right. And so that body armor weakens, and the result is you're more access to the emotions and mental traumas.
What kind of support is needed to move through something like that if you've had a particularly traumatic time of it?
Yeah, well, usually during the fast, I'm doing that support because you need, to clear it, you need somebody who's kind of trained. You don't have to be a psychiatrist, but you need to be trained in the mental health field at least.
How do you suggest a person so they're fasting away at one of your retreats, and all of a sudden they're being bombarded with these toxic, stuffed emotions that are emerging?
Yeah.
What's your first recommendation for people that's going through that? What do you recommend for them?
Tell us about it. we meet. You got to share it. A lot of people are afraid to share it, so we actually have a morning group sharing to bring out whatever difficulty with fasting, emotions coming up, mental states coming up. So first thing in the morning, um, we do my wife's the yoga teacher, and we do the yoga in the morning, and then we have a sharing. Um, we ask people to bring it up, and then usually I work with it. And I said, groups not bigger than 70 people. You know,
That
that it will
that's a
work.
good size right there. I mean, that's
Yeah,
you got your hands full, I'll bet.
yeah.
Yeah. So
It keeps you busy. I'll put it that way.
you indicate that spiritual fasting is also a powerful treatment for medical imbalances and your brain chemistry. How does it affect brain chemistry?
Well, a lot of people's brain chemistry has been imbalanced by lifestyle, by toxins, by all the things that trauma that are going on in society. And part of the work when you're fasting is it allows things to come back into normal. The normal balance is restored. That's really the key. It seems really simple, but when we understand it, creating a space, that's why it's good to be on retreat, creating a space where you can just be there with it. It allows your normal neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, and I don't want to give a whole list of neurotransmitters, but the point is they start to come into balance. And that's key. And I won't go too far. I don't really use pharmaceuticals because we can bring it back in balance with ortho-molecular with vitamins, minerals, fasting, and so forth, rather than maintaining the imbalance by kind of covering it up.
So, do you walk a person through starting to introduce foods again? And if so, which foods do you suggest they start with?
Um, it's a good, excellent question. At a 7-day fast, it takes, depending on the person, 1 to 3 days to come off. So we give a very, kind of vegetable soup, raw soup, and a little bit of salad type thing. And then we just kind of add to it. We don't do nuts and seeds. Well, we'll do like a tahini type thing, which is kind of already chewed up the 2nd day. And the 3rd day, pretty much they go back to their regular diet. But what we recommend very strongly is people make a step forward. I don't like people to go from 0 to 100, because then you usually fail. You get over your head. But, make one step you can do. You can absolutely do it. That's what I ask people to do.
Do
And
you
then,
give do you
go
give
ahead.
instructions to your people before they engage on preparatory diet or
Oh,
anything?
yeah.
I would think that'd be important because if you go in after you've been eating McDonald's for a couple months, you might be in trouble.
Absolutely. We tell people before, but also afterwards. And I'm giving lectures during the fast. So people kind of know. And then we have a whole way of, take, as they say, the one step at a time is important. People can get too enthusiastic. They're feeling so good. But then you get a rebound. We don't want a rebound. So I'd rather go a little slow, and just make one big change, not 5 big changes.
Not 5 maybe. So, what do you find the most supportive for a person as far as diet? You mentioned vegan, and this is after they've done the cleanse. You've
Yeah.
mentioned vegan is if what if a person doesn't want to go vegan and they want to go back to their good old cow? Okay, it covers your dinner plate. What do you see happen? Do they backslide? Do you lose the benefits of the
Yeah. You,
fast?
you don't get, you feel the results of the fast last for about 4 months if you're not really changing your diet. And then the tendency is you start slipping back because you're going to old patterns. Like this person, he was a type 1 diabetic. That's already an issue that he's cured for 9 months. And he starts eating fish, and suddenly everything gets off. Okay, do you see what I'm trying to say here?
I do.
So it's like, stop eating fish. Just go back to where you're going, okay?
Can it have to do with the quality of the fish? Say, for instance, if it's farm raised or not not real clean.
No, the fish concentrate from the water a lot of toxins. It used to be that the most toxic flesh food was cow, the chicken, but actually fish at this point, like in the last few years, they're now considered the most toxic because they're concentrating all the toxins from the ocean, and even farm-fed type fish, they're still getting toxins. That some people feel they're even more toxic.
So particularly if they're the big fish that eats the little fish, okay,
Right,
so that's kind of
they're
like a double whammy,
concentrating it.
isn't it? Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I
And
understand.
in general, the higher up on the food chain you eat, the more toxins. So that the meat, fish, chicken, they pretty much carry about 95% of the toxins.
So if you stay organic and stay vegan, how often would you need to fast?
Well, it's a good question. I'm suggesting 7 days twice a year because you still got to breathe the air, right? For example, one of the things we were testing for was depleted uranium.
Mhm.
Well, you're exposed. Everybody is exposed. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So we're all exposed to toxins. The idea is to minimize it by eating lower on the food chain. That's really, I don't want to be, and the reason I take that position is I don't like people getting into a purist position because they get obsessive, and that's not really healthy. So it's like, no, you do the best you can. That's the advice, and take one step more clean. And if you fast twice a year, you're going to clear whatever accumulated during the intervals.
So same thing, if you go back into a toxic situation at home, you probably
Exactly.
yeah, you're going to have to
Okay.
plan on another fast sooner rather than later, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Um, how does a person know when it's time to go back on a fast, on a cleanse? Say you say twice a year, but maybe something comes up. What would come up that would indicate to them that they need to do it more frequently?
Well, usually people start to feel sluggish. They tend to get headaches. They tend to feel muscle aches and pains. Um, like, above the age of 40, everyone has an increased brain inflammation. So your brain isn't working as well. These are things everybody faces. Okay, it's not a disease. We're just talking about everybody faces it from the environmental type things. Um, so when people start to feel, uh, I'll use the word toxic, slow, unclear, their memory isn't working quite so well. Those are good indications, and you don't feel as strong. You lose strength.
Mhm.
Those are pretty good signs. And with
Well,
age, there's a tendency for that to happen sooner than later. So
it's time for us.
actually,
It's time for us to take another station break. Stick with us. Dr. Chowsins and I will continue to explore many faces of fasting. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution. Can fasting help us with our Kundalini? For that matter, what is the Kundalini? This is Mission
okay,
Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. Gabriel Chowsins. His website, drchowsins, spiritualfasting.com. And that is a question. You seemed like you were ready to
it,
answer that one.
it's an excellent question. So fasting definitely enhances the flow of the Kundalini. Okay. Now, my spiritual teacher, 1975, kind of put me in charge if anybody had any difficulty with it. So I have a lot of experience, and I was kind of involved in a book called Kundalini Transcendence or Psychosis. So I work with this. This is like a subspecialty. Just so when I answered, so fasting definitely helps the movement of the Kundalini. Okay.
And what is the Kundalini?
Yeah, and Kundalini is the cosmic energy that is stored at the base of the spine in the subtle bodies, okay? Not in the physical body, but in the subtle body. The Muladhara chakra, so to speak, slightly below that. And it's the spiritualizing force of the universe. And when it's awakening, it begins to move upward. At the same time, we're always being affected by the cosmic Kundalini coming down. And when they come together, it's a very powerful upgrading of consciousness.
So we're going through quite an interesting phase in our planet's history. As we move into more into the age of Aquarius, frequency on
Yeah.
the surface of the planet is rising. I know these times have been prophesized, but we're really seeing people having a hard time of it. Okay, um,
Yes.
what can how is it affecting our Kundalini, and if so, what can we do about it?
Well, I would say that the people who are having a hard time generally don't have an awakened Kundalini, because when the Kundalini is awakened, you get more conscious, and so you alter how you're looking at the world. A yoga teaching is the world is as you perceive it, the world is as you believe it to be. So if you have a negative view and you have that kind of negativity, usually that's not the energy it helps awaken it. I'll put it that way. Um, so the whole idea is awaken, but it is to change the way you're looking at the world, and that's the key. And all these are subtle, and they all sound simple, but it's a big step to alter that. So when the Kundalini is awakened, it actually helps you make that shift because you can feel it. Okay. Literally, you can feel it. When I had the Kundalini awakening in 1975, literally, I had this red thing going up my back like a snake all the way.
Oh my goodness.
And
Yeah.
I had stigmata on my hands. Now, that's not the usual thing that happens to people, okay? But what I'm saying is these things really do happen. The other thing that happens when the Kundalini is awakened, there's often a lot of physical healings that spontaneously happen.
You're
And
dealing with higher frequency, right?
exactly, and it's uplifting your frequency, and therefore these healing, I won't call it spontaneous, but it is spontaneous since you're not doing anything. The Kundalini is awake; it's increasing your frequency, and everything gets better.
What does it do to your chakra system when it wakes up?
Um, Generally rebalances. Okay, um, that's probably the simplest way of saying it, but it won't. The way the Kundalini works, it has kind of a divine intelligence. It doesn't really overwhelm your chakra system. So it's working on the first three first, and it has to get clear. Then it kind of moves up. And you can feel a progression in the body as it happens, which is nice. And I explain that to people so they don't worry about it.
We've all seen the pictures of the back of the spine with energy moving up and
That's,
down in
that's
a
correct.
like a double helix, and it kind of weaves in and out of the chakras, I
Yes.
believe. What
Yeah.
is that, the Kundalini? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, no. These are channels that you're seeing. And those channels, where they converge, is where you see a chakra.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the big channels, the Ida, Pagala, and Sushumna, those are the big nadis, carry the Kundalini, but they're not the Kundalini. Is
Gotcha.
that, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So they're the carriers to which the Kundalini flows. When you're fasting, those channels get unclogged, so it's much easier for the Kundalini to be awakened.
So I would expect the more toxic we are, the more resistance to the frequency of the Kundalini. I mean, just like
Uh,
electrical
yes,
resistance.
yes.
So that's why
Um,
probably a lot of us don't have an awakened up Kundalini, right?
well, but again, during the fast, about 80% of the people, because you're detoxing, and I'm doing the Shaktipat, about 80% do get an awakening Kundalini.
Do you have
So
meditations and whatnot that you share in order to, guided meditations that help a person consciously work with these things, the
yes,
Kundalini, the chakra system?
yeah. I mean, we're meditating 2 hours a day during the spiritual fast, and um, I give people some advice on how to work with things. Um, we use a mantra that Moses received at the burning bush, and that Jesus gave when he came down from the mountain to his disciples. That's the mantra that we use. Um, I can show it to you if you want.
Probably not right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Um,
Um,
but
so
but that helps stabilize things. That's my point.
tell us about the epigenetic upgrade you associate with fasting.
Well, that's one of the most exciting things. And I didn't have the language until I began reading about it in other type of situations. Um, but it realigns. Epigenetic is the control system over the genetics, and that can vary to be a healthy control system or not so healthy. So during the fast, there's a much greater a realignment. It's the P53 gene. I mean, it's more technical than I'm sharing, but that actually realigns it, and then the energy flows, and the epigenetic shifts back to normal.
Here's an interesting one. I'm real curious about this. You state that fasting enhances your body's ability to become a superconductor of the divine. Please explain.
Well, perfect sequence. So we talked about the 72,000 nadis, three main nadis, and as they get cleared out with the fasting, okay, so there is an obstruction in the nadis, the main nadis, then the energy moves more flowy, and then the Kundalini, we can call it the Ruach Kadesh in the biblical system, or the Holy Spirit, it all moves more freely through those channels because they're not blocked.
So, how does that impact the world at large and the people around us if we're a superconductor, if you will?
It's really, your questions are great. We also do a world healing meditation that I've been doing since 1985, every equinox and solstice. So, and this is the answer to your question, is that when our frequencies are increased, right, it increases the world frequency. So we're literally uplifting the world. Now, just to make the point really clear, sunspots are, the more sunspots, the more emotional disorder happens on the planet. During equinox and solstice, where we're doing these meditations, it decreases the amount of sunspots as compared to previous times before people were meditating. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So we are having a cosmic effect, not just the world planetary effect. Okay. So we're having an effect on the cosmos by meditating. So we're creating positive thought forms. Now, in cities, in a state called Rhode Island, meditators came in, like 350 meditators for the whole state, and they decreased the amount of violent crime by 43%. People said that's a fluke. Well, next year they came back and decreased it by 49%. So this peace meditation, which I've led at the United Nations, actually, okay, under auspices of Robert Mueller, the assistant director of the UN, that you're creating a vibration that actually uplifts everybody. That's pretty exciting.
It is. And is that also tied to the concept that it doesn't take a majority of the people, it just takes a certain amount to reach critical mass to then
Absolutely.
affect the whole?
Absolutely. We're talking, there's another study where just 1% in a town were meditating. They did 11 towns where 1% were meditators, and they had an 18% decrease in the amount of crime.
And these are all documented because
Yeah,
they keep
they're
track of it.
all, there's been, since 1973, when people kind of caught on to meditation, there's been over 300 studies to document this.
Okay. Um, how can how do you envision this changing the world?
Well, taking it from a UN, when I taught and led meditation there, the theory that Dr. Miller had, who's the assistant director of the UN, was that as the more people meditate, we're upgrading the whole frequency. And therefore, you're upgrading the frequency of the planet. By and large, as I said, there's been over 300 studies that show that. But in the long run, we're saying more people meditating, the more people do it. Now, there's a biblical term that we found. It says 10 will chase away 100, and 100 will chase away 10,000. So when 100 people are meditating together, you're creating a thought form for peace that's equal to 100,000.
Amazing. And on that note, unfortunately, we're out of time. Dr. Chassis, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It was fun. Thank you for your excellent interview.
Thank you. Our guest this hour has been Dr. Gabriel Cousens, the author of many books, including There is a Cure for Diabetes. To find out more about Dr. Cousens' spiritual fasting and where you can find his books and all he has to offer, visit his website, drchowsensespiritualfasting.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy our past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time on the Voice of Canada Broadcast Network, VOCBNCA, where this mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.